My wife and I are seeking advice on how to salvage our marriage. I will begin by providing some background information about myself and my spouse. I have been married to my husband for 5 years, and we have been together for 7 years. For the sake of confidentiality, I will refer to us as James and Skylar. We met during our second year of community college. I obtained a 2-year degree in office management, while James went on to earn a 4-year degree in business administration. James and I met in our second year of community college. He obtained a 4-year degree in business administration from a university that conducts remote classes. Fast forward to today, I am 26, James is 27, and we were planning on starting a family later this year. Our dream was to have 4 kids, ideally 2 boys and 2 girls. We had a very happy marriage, and our 2 families loved both of us. Here is where I made a mistake. I developed what some may call a work. My husband, for example, was a delivery driver for one of the 3 largest delivery organizations in the country. He made deliveries to our office. For the sake of confidentiality, we will refer to this man as Jaden. Jaden was 25 and single. He had been delivering to my office for nearly 2 years. From the moment we met, there was a certain chemistry between us. It was not necessarily romantic, but there was an undeniable spark. I was drawn to him, and we would spend at least 10 minutes talking every time he made a delivery. I would converse with him for approximately 10 minutes each time he made a delivery. I always made sure I was in a visible position when it was time for his delivery. On one occasion, our conversation progressed beyond the usual scope of a brief exchange. Jaden informed me that he had a personal question to ask me. He stated that it was a highly personal matter and that he did not want me to be offended or to jeopardize our professional relationship. I assured him that I would not be offended and that he could ask me anything. Jaden then proceeded to tell me that he felt a strong attraction to me and that he was wondering if I felt the same way. I took a moment to collect my thoughts and then informed him that I felt the same attraction. I also told him that I would not be offended if he had asked me out, as I was aware that he was interested in me romantically. However, I informed him that I was already married, which ended the conversation. I experienced a profound and compelling attraction to him, and I wondered if he felt similarly. His audacity was surprising and somewhat disconcerting. After a brief interval for reflection, I informed him of my feelings. I told him that I, too, felt a strong attraction. Jaden then revealed that he would have proposed marriage if I were not already married. I thanked him for the compliment and that was the end of our conversation. He departed, and that was the end of our interaction for the next. Over the following week, we engaged in brief, awkward, and superficial conversation when he came in to deliver packages. I was deeply concerned and felt a sense of guilt that I may have crossed a line with him. I was unable to dispel this feeling of unease. James and I were enjoying a fulfilling married life. I wish to state clearly that I have always been entirely satisfied with James as a lover, friend, and husband. I believe that, at the time, he would have said the same about me. He was, in my view, the ideal partner. In light of these considerations, I began to entertain the possibility of pursuing a relationship with Jaden beyond the scope of our professional interactions. I subsequently learned that this inclination is sometimes referred to as cake eating, a term that I initially found somewhat amusing but ultimately dismissed as implausible. I did not devote much attention to this line of thought. Furthermore, I was aware that my husband would not consent to such a proposition. Even if he did agree, it could potentially damage our marriage and result in our family severing communication. I was not willing to accept such a consequence. As time passed, my married life continued to flourish. However, I remained preoccupied with the idea of connecting with Jaden. I resumed my research and came across a post online titled, "It Doesn't Hurt to Ask." The blog post in question was written by a woman who claimed to be in a successful open marriage. She wrote about how she loved her husband but also wanted to be in a relationship with a man she met while doing volunteer work. The blogger wrote that she just didn't know how to approach the subject with her husband without destroying their marriage. She kept these feelings bottled up for over 2 years and then one day when they were on after a lengthy drive, she made the decision to inquire about the possibility of an open marriage. To her surprise, he expressed considerable interest. The details of their subsequent relationship are as follows. They initiated an open marriage and began seeing partners outside of their marriage 3 to 4 times per month. The blogger stated that they have been engaged in this arrangement for 4 years and that their marriage has become stronger than ever, and they are both happier than ever. The blogger's account resonated with me because it mirrored my own experiences. I was curious about the subject but hesitant to inquire directly. On a Sunday morning, as we were relaxing at home and browsing the internet on our phones, I decided to broach the topic. I posed the question to my husband directly. I recently came across an online post about open marriages. What are your thoughts on them? He then inquired whether I was discussing couples engaging in extramarital relationships. I confirmed and followed up with another question. He considered the matter and stated that he believed it to be repugnant and that individuals should simply obtain a divorce if they wish to engage in extramarital sexual relationships. I informed him that it is becoming increasingly prevalent in the United States and numerous Western countries. James's facial expression indicated that he was merely revolted by the topic, so I promptly shifted the discussion based on his response. I intend to refrain from ever discussing the matter again, as it is not something I wish to revisit. The discussion of open marriages had the potential to jeopardize our marriage. However, a couple of weeks later, James and I were cuddling in bed, high on love after just having a fantastic and sexy time. I was lying on his chest and could not see his face. Out of the blue, he asked who I had in mind when I brought up open marriages the previous week. I was startled and felt a pit in my stomach. I slowly raised my head and turned to look at him. I said, "What are you asking?" James then proceeded to elucidate the rationale behind his assertion, citing the results of a recent study that purported to indicate a correlation between a woman's suggestion of an open relationship and either a prior infidelity or the existence of an alternative romantic interest. His disclosure, however, proved to be a source of considerable surprise and distress for me. James, in turn, became aware of the profound impact his words had on me and proceeded to admonish me for what he perceived to be a lack of transparency. I remained silent, unable to respond. I averted my gaze and informed him that I had never been unfaithful to him and would never do so. I could have concluded the conversation at that point, but I chose not to. Instead, I disclosed that, should we ever contemplate an open marriage, I had a colleague at work whom I might consider. James then requested that I elaborate on this colleague. I proceeded to recount my interactions with Jayden, including his own statements about his feelings, but I did not divulge the information. I had reciprocated the same feelings back to him. James's next words caused me considerable distress. He asserted that, technically, I had already cheated on him. I became irritated and responded in a defiant manner, insisting that I had not. However, he countered that the relationship I had with Jayden was what is termed an emotional affair. I was previously unaware of this concept, so James provided an explanation. As our discussion progressed, I became increasingly distressed. James proposed that we cease discussing the matter for the time being, citing the need for rest in preparation for an early start the following day. He fell asleep rapidly, whereas I was unable to do so. Instead, I accessed my mobile phone and began to examine the concept of emotional affairs, reading a multitude of articles and posts on the subject. James' assertion was indeed accurate. The relationship I had with Jayden was perilously close to constituting an emotional affair. However, to be precise, it was, in fact, a full-blown emotional affair. I was overcome with remorse, as though I had committed a grave infidelity against my husband. I was unable to sleep and arose from bed, descending to the kitchen to prepare tea. I eventually succumbed to slumber on the couch at approximately 4 a.m. The time was midnight. At approximately 6:45 a.m., James roused me with a kiss, informing me of his imminent departure for work and urging me to commence my day, given that it was nearly 7 a.m. As was my custom, I reciprocated his kiss and informed him of my affection. However, on this occasion, I placed particular emphasis on the sentiment. My mind was clouded with guilt over my feelings for Jayden. Several days elapsed, and once again, we were in bed after engaging in sexual intercourse when James suddenly stated that he would be amenable to trying an open marriage if I truly desired it. This prompted AB to reconsider the proposal, prompting him to inquire as to why it was being introduced at this juncture. In response, James indicated that he had been contemplating the matter and had come to the conclusion that it might be beneficial to explore the possibility of an open marriage while they were still in their early years together. AB expressed interest in the idea but was adamant that it would not come at the expense of their marriage or the love they shared. James was the most important person in AB's life. He responded by stating that if our bond of love is strong, it will withstand infidelity. I countered that a mutual open relationship would not be considered infidelity because we would both be agreeing to it, rather than commenting on it. He simply stated, "Consider our marriage open, starting right now." I was taken aback once more and urged me to consider the necessity of establishing ground rules. He specified that the only ground rules he wanted were as follows: first, we needed to announce who we planned to sleep with and when in advance; second, we had to disclose the encounter to each other afterward without going into graphic detail; and third, protection must be used for all forms of sexual activity. I concurred with his stipulations and proposed adding a couple more points: 4, that we would maintain confidentiality regarding our open marriage, and 5, that we would pledge to each other that these extramarital relationships would not result in the dissolution of our marriage and that we would remain together. James stated that he could not agree to either of these. When I inquired as to why, he simply stated that he was not amenable to these stipulations and was not inclined to engage in further discussion. I experienced a profound sense of unease, as this was a stark departure from James's previously expressed views. However, I sought comfort in his embrace, and we eventually fell asleep. My discussions with James left me with a profound sense of unease regarding the prospect of an open relationship. I was concerned that he might have ulterior motives, so for the following month, I did not pursue the open relationship. During this period, I maintained a distance from Jayden at work, engaging in brief, superficial conversations about the weather and other mundane topics. Then, one day Jayden informed me that he had been missing our conversations and inquired as to the cause. I informed him that I had been preoccupied with work and domestic responsibilities, resulting in a lack of available time for dialogue. I was contemplating whether I should divulge the details of my open marriage. Ultimately, I decided to proceed with the disclosure. In hindsight, I wish I could reverse this decision. Given the circumstances, it did not seem appropriate to initiate such a discussion in the workplace. Instead, I extended an invitation for us to meet for an informal drink after work. He accepted, and we proceeded to a nearby bar with an outdoor seating area, ideal for the weather. The weather was characteristic of the early spring season. I informed him of the recent inception of my open marriage and directly inquired about his interest in pursuing a romantic relationship with me. He did not hesitate to respond affirmatively, stating that he had been awaiting my initiative and had refrained from initiating contact out of respect. He further disclosed that he had been experiencing dreams about me for several months. The majority of our discussion during the initial meeting was characterized by flirtatious interactions. We scheduled our first romantic encounter for the following day at his residence, immediately following his work shift. However, I emphasized the necessity for me to depart by 6 p.m. The meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m. to return home to my husband, who remained my primary concern that night. I returned home and prepared a meal for James. After dinner, I informed him about my discussion and meeting with Jayden earlier that day. I also informed him that we had scheduled a date for the following day after work at his place. I made sure to clarify that I would proceed with our open marriage, provided James was still comfortable with it. James's response indicated that he was taken aback. He replied, "Oh yes, okay. So you're going to meet him tomorrow?" I confirmed the meeting but reassured him that we could still call it off, as my main priority was to ensure his comfort and happiness within our relationship. James insisted, "No, let's do this." We hugged, but I sensed stiffness and distance in his embrace, unlike our usual ones. I attributed this to nerves. We did not talk much that evening, as James was occupied. Given that I was working in his office and had my own tasks to complete, I spooned with him and attempted to initiate intimacy. However, he mentioned that he was too fatigued to engage in such activities and needed to rest the following morning. When I awoke, James had already departed, leaving a text message stating that he had an early meeting which he had forgotten to inform me about. He also stated that he would see me that night. This behavior was atypical for James, but I disregarded it and proceeded with my usual routine of getting dressed and commuting to work. I selected an outfit that day that I felt was particularly flattering. I was aware that Jayden and I were scheduled to meet immediately after work. Throughout the day, I attempted to contact James via text message but did not receive a response. I once again considered canceling the scheduled meeting with Jayden. 17 p. At 4:17 p.m., I received a text from James. He wrote that he loved me and would see me that night. This brought a sense of relief, and I interpreted it as a green signal from him to proceed. I will provide a detailed account of the events that transpired. Jayden and I met in the evening. The encounter was satisfactory, though not as satisfying as my interactions with James. There were no feelings of love, but the experience was fulfilling, largely due to the intense physical attraction and the illicit nature of our encounter. I departed his residence at approximately 6:40 p.m., after an hour and a half. I was surprised to find that James was not home yet. I was fine with this, as it gave me time to shower and put my clothes in the washing machine to remove Jayden's cologne smell. However, I did not want James to be exposed to this. Despite feeling physically fulfilled, I experienced a profound sense of guilt, shame, and remorse, as though I had been tainted. I was experiencing a state of cognitive dissonance and a certain degree of nervousness. I thus decided to prepare a quick yet excellent dinner for James and to light candles in order to create a romantic atmosphere. My intention was to make it clear to him that I loved him and that the physical affair with Jayden was of no consequence to me. It was merely a physical act. The level of love and physical fulfillment I experience with James is incomparable to that of my relationship with Jayden. I was anticipating that our night would conclude with sexual intercourse. Some may perceive this as selfish and distasteful, but it is crucial to note that I utilized protection during my encounters with Jayden, and no personal information was exchanged at 7:30 p.m. At 7:30 p.m., James had not yet returned home. I attempted to contact him via telephone, but the call was redirected to voicemail. Consequently, I sent him a text message to inform him that I was at home and preparing dinner. Despite this, I did not receive a response. As the evening progressed, I continued to call and text James, but he did not respond. I received a text message from James stating, "Don't wait up. I'll be home late." I sent a reply inquiring about his whereabouts and the identity of his companion, but he did not respond. I was fatigued and fell asleep at some point after midnight. I was awakened by the sound of the shower in the spare bathroom and proceeded to investigate. The door was locked, which was highly unusual for James. I knocked, but he did not respond. Approximately 10 minutes later, James emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, and inquired about my evening. I informed him of its details. He inquired directly, "Did you engage in sexual intercourse with Jayden?" I advised him against using that term, but he proceeded to admit that he and Jayden had indeed been intimate. I then asked where he had been. He replied that he had spent the night at several bars and had been out dancing. I inquired about his companion, noting the presence of perfume on his discarded clothes. I asked who this woman was. He stated that, since they had not slept together, he did not feel the need to divulge her identity. I will refrain from including the explicit words here, but I can confirm that he never used the F-word. His manner of speaking to me and his use of that term caused me significant concern. I then inquired as to why he utilized the guest bathroom for showering. He informed me that he would be utilizing the guest bedroom and bathroom until I completed 2 STD tests. His response was deeply distressing, and I responded that this was not part of our established rules. Jayden was required to use. He responded by stating that protection was necessary for all sexual contact. He then asked if I was aware of the existence of oral HPV and oral herpes. He informed me that he would not be engaging in any sexual contact with me until I had been cleared of any sexually transmitted diseases. He stated that this was his way of practicing social distancing. I was extremely distressed and informed James that he wanted to end our marriage, as this was the last thing I had wanted. James responded, "No way. You had your turn, and now I'm going to have mine." I was upset, so I continued crying. He stated that he was going to bed because he had an early meeting and needed rest. I spent most of the night crying. I eventually fell asleep on the couch. By the time I awoke, James had already slipped out. He sent me a text message stating, "Do not wait up for me." I attempted to call him, but he did not answer. I sent him several text messages and left several voicemails throughout the day, but he never responded. I was distraught and felt as though I had irreparably damaged my marriage. We did not receive any deliveries that day, so I did not see Jayden, but I called him at 4, the time was 30 p.m. I am writing to inform you that I will be unavailable until 4:30 p.m. today. I inquired as to the possibility of meeting that evening, to which he consented, noting that I appeared distressed. I informed him that I was, indeed, upset but suggested that we discuss the matter further upon my arrival at his residence. Upon meeting, I informed him of my desire to terminate our relationship, emphasizing that I loved my husband and desired only him. I proceeded to elucidate the circumstances, and he expressed comprehension. However, he did request one final encounter, stipulating that he would cease all communication with me, except for professional matters. I assented, and we engaged in a brief sexual encounter, comprising only the most basic sexual positions, and lasting less than 10 minutes. Subsequent to this, he expressed displeasure with the encounter. You remained stationary, exhibiting a lack of responsiveness. I apologized, acknowledging that this entire situation was a significant misstep on my part, and that his actions were not the cause of the problem. I dressed and gave him a final embrace before departing. Jayden stated that he would never understand women like me. I inquired about the meaning behind his remark, but he simply replied, nothing. He gave no further comment, merely regarding me with a look of complete disgust. I then took my leave, weeping the entire drive home. How could I have been so foolish? I had destroyed my marriage for what? For nothing at all. I felt I had to be the most foolish person in the world. I was once again overcome with a sense of uncleanliness. James did not return until 1, the time was 12 a.m. On that night, I was overcome with a sense of despair, cognizant of the fact that I had effectively become a single woman. On Friday, James's actions resulted in a significant disruption to my life. Similarly, he departed before I arose and sent a text message indicating that I should not wait for him. The distance and coldness that characterized our relationship were particularly distressing. I value spending time with my husband during the mornings, evenings, and weekends. These periods are often dedicated to preparing his meals, engaging in physical affection, taking walks, and other forms of social interaction. Discussing inconsequential matters was no longer an option, and I found myself longing for it. I sent James a text message indicating my desire to speak with him the following morning. He replied with an affirmative response, stipulating that the conversation should take place as soon as possible, given that he was departing for the day. I inquired about his whereabouts, but he did not respond. He did not return until 1 a.m. 30 a. On Monday morning, I remained silent and merely lay in bed, weeping. He once again took a shower and promptly retired to bed. I arose at an early hour to await James's awakening. He entered the kitchen at 7 a.m. He proceeded to pour some orange juice, and the atmosphere was palpably frigid and devoid of emotion. He made no attempt to initiate contact and instead sat down at the table with me and began to stare at his phone. I rose from my seat and approached him, sitting on his lap and demanding that he look at me. He averted his gaze, but I persisted, grasping his face in a gesture of insistence. Gazing into his brown eyes, I informed him that I held him in the highest regard and that I had made a poor decision, not a mere mistake. I conveyed my remorse and stated that I was willing to do anything to regain his trust and affection. He remained silent, merely regarding me with a gaze that suggested he found my words implausible. I then inquired if he still held feelings for me. He remained silent. I implored him, James, please respond. He asserted that he was unsure. I began to weep and asserted, I will make this right. He countered, I do not believe you can. I then labeled him a bastard and accused him of orchestrating my divorce. He denied this, but I pressed him on whether he had indeed planned it. He then introduced the concept of an open marriage, which he was aware was incompatible with our marriage based on his research. I then inquired as to why he did not simply terminate the relationship and demand that I cease all communication with Jayden. He responded that it is not possible to compel someone to be faithful, as one either is or is not. I informed him that I was not a monogamous person and requested that he not abandon us. He remained silent and simply departed. I inquired about his destination and was informed that he would return after midnight. I then reminded him that the following day was Easter Sunday and that our scheduled departure was at 7, the time was 12 a.m. To drive to my parents' house. My family adores my husband, and we spend nearly every holiday with him, as his parents now live in Florida. He informed me that he was not going to accompany me. I was shocked and devastated and requested that he reconsider. He simply stated that he would not. I inquired as to what I should tell my parents, but he did not provide an answer. He then stated, "Just tell them the truth." I implored him to remain at home with me, but he simply dressed, gathered a bag of clothes, and departed. I am profoundly distressed and feel utterly dejected. I am seeking advice and guidance from this esteemed community on how to salvage my marriage. I would be grateful to hear from anyone who has experienced a similar situation and managed to rebuild their relationship. I am seeking insight from individuals who have experienced a similar situation with an open marriage and whether it is possible for a couple to recover from such a betrayal. I am also interested in learning from those who have successfully reconciled after an open relationship. I appreciate your attention and am grateful for this opportunity to share my story. I will now take a moment to collect my thoughts. I would like to provide an update on the situation. I am grateful to those who offered feedback and support. It was instrumental in helping me cope with the recent challenges. While there were individuals who provided constructive criticism and called me names, I accept responsibility for my actions and value their input. Easter Sunday and today have been particularly difficult days for me. The following 2 days were among the most challenging of my life. Upon arriving at my parents' residence, I was immediately confronted with the question of James's whereabouts. I provided a false response, stating that he had encountered an unexpected emergency at work and would be unable to attend. I offered this explanation in an effort to avoid disrupting the planned family gathering. My family accepted this narrative, yet they began to exhibit signs of suspicion as the day progressed. I proceeded as though I were texting and calling my husband as usual, in order to deflect suspicion. I sent several fake texts to throw them off and acted as though I had received texts from him. I informed everyone that he was still busy at the office and would call me the following day. In reality, he never called or texted me, not even to inquire about my safe arrival. This was a highly distressing experience. I had planned to stay at my parents' house and discuss our marital difficulties on Monday. I was apprehensive about doing so, as I anticipated that they would be angry and disapprove of my actions. This morning, I informed them of the situation, and it unfolded in a manner that I had anticipated. They expressed their displeasure, used profanity, and stated that they did not raise me in this manner. My sister was also contacted by my parents, who proceeded to reprimand her as well. I expressed my remorse and informed them that I was aware of the gravity of my actions and that I would strive to avoid such mistakes in the future. I emphasized that my primary objective was to regain the trust and affection of James. Ultimately, despite their displeasure, they informed me of their affection and expressed hope for the restoration of our marriage. On Monday, I drove home during the day. Upon my return, I attempted to contact James via telephone and text message, but he did not respond. Instead, I discovered a note on the counter indicating that he had departed for Florida to visit his parents and would return on Sunday. I experienced profound distress at the realization that our planned visit to his parents in early May would no longer occur, due to circumstances that I had inadvertently caused. I was overwhelmed with self-reproach. I was also overcome with a profound sense of sadness and despair. What concerned me most was that I was no longer experiencing the acute emotional pain and remorse that I had previously felt. It seemed as if these intense emotions had been internalized, and were no longer manifesting externally through tears. After nearly a year, I had not planned to post again. However, there was a significant level of interest from the community, prompting me to share both positive and negative developments. The negative news is that I am divorced. The dissolution of the marriage was finalized in December. James ultimately decided that he could not remain married to me after I was with another man. He advised me to never trust him again and was embarrassed to be seen in public with me. He felt that divorce was the only option that would restore his masculinity. I disagree with this assessment, as I do not believe that he ever lost his masculinity. Additionally, I have not informed anyone about my brief connection with Jaden, except for our respective families. On a more positive note, James and I have recently begun dating. Once more, on the occasion of Valentine's Day last month, we resumed our relationship. It has been a most agreeable experience. We only see each other when he desires, which is approximately once a week. Our passion level is considerably higher than it was when we first became involved 7 years ago. He has made it clear to me that this is merely a physical relationship and that we will never. I am amenable to the prospect of remaining unmarried, residing separately, or maintaining the status of being a couple. However, I must admit that I am not entirely comfortable with this arrangement. My ultimate objective is to rekindle my relationship with James. In the event that this does not materialize, I aspire to have children with him. I want to clarify that I would never resort to baby trapping tactics. My desire is to have children with this man. I have contemplated various possibilities for sharing custody. And make this all work without being married. I am aware that this may appear to be an unconventional approach, but I hold a profound affection for him and am not inclined to pursue a relationship with another individual. I am cognizant that this course of action may potentially compromise the prospect of a future relationship with another man. However, I am exclusively committed to James and do not envision a future with anyone else. I will not be posting further updates at this time. Unless something significant occurs, would appreciate your input regarding my circumstances. Do you believe I am misguided for pursuing a relationship with James? Should I simply move on and seek another partner with whom to start a family? Jaden is not a viable option and never was. He was merely an unfortunate decision on my part, one I will not repeat. Thank you. Music.